Say goodbye to daily stains and dirty surfaces with new kitchen gun.
This is just a really quick and dirty video about the Manmelter. Oh god, the Manmelter. It's not a bad weapon, but it certainly gets overshadowed by the other flare gun options. Why? The flare gun has on-demand crits that provide high burst damage. The skill floor for the weapon is markedly higher than the other flare guns, simply because this burst damage is really good. The detonator is an invaluable ranged harassment and mobility tool that lets the pyro close the distance between himself and the enemy to make better use of his flamethrower or melee options, and it can set multiple people on fire at once. The Scorch Shot, but the Manmelter, there is just no strong incentive to use this item. It needs something. What happened? The Manmelter is a flare gun that has a 50% faster projectile speed, no ammo limitations, and it allows for you to extinguish teammates in exchange for a stored critical hit to be used at any time you want. Plus, the extinguish gives you 20 health per teammate. It also has a passive reload when inactive, just like the other flare guns. This sounds good, but the only major upside to the weapon, the extinguishing for crits, is only a situational benefit, since it requires the opposing team to have a pyro. Yes, fair, a pyro on the opposite team is more often the case than not, but why use the Manmelter when the other flare gun options provide an on-demand damage bonus on burning players and or an additional utility without the need to be reliant on an enemy player to essentially give them to you? In order to even have the stored critical hits, you have to wait for a pyro to attack your teammates, swap to your secondary, suck up the fire, and then finally, you have your damage bonus similar to that of the other flare guns. But then you have to stay alive long enough to even make use of your stored crits, which is supposed to be made easier with the 50% faster projectile speed. But the faster projectile speed only makes a significant difference at greater distances. Otherwise, the Manmelter's travel time is similar to that of the other flare guns. Despite these drawbacks, the Manmelter isn't a bad weapon. When the opportunity arises, you can extinguish multiple teammates for like 20 stored crits and then just go to town firing away at the other team, or save them for some combos with your AIRBLAST or melee. Not to mention, it's the only flare gun that can reliably crit other pyros without the need to play around with janky flame particle hitboxes. But why use the Manmelter, whose main mechanic is centered around extinguishing teammates, when you already have a primary weapon that does it for you, does more damage on demand, can airblast projectiles, and can knock enemy players around? I just don't see a strong incentive to use the Manmelter when 1. The flamethrower does what the Manmelter does better, 2. The other flare guns are simply more reliable in the damage dealing department, and 3. Waiting around for an enemy pyro to set your team on fire can potentially take, well, a long time, largely invalidating the only beneficial stat that the weapon has. Not to mention, the Manmelter is plagued with visual problems and glitches. It lacks a noticeable reload animation, which makes it really hard to know when you can fire again. All we have is a little mechanical squeak and a spark animation, and they are really easy to miss. Its extinguishing, sucking animation, puff of dust thing is pretty hard to see, and glitches out more often than not, making it hard to know if your attempts to extinguish are even registering with the game. Sometimes you hit right click and nothing happens. And sometimes when you fire your crits, it plays the same massive burst of fire animation that plays when you extinguish somebody, blocking your entire field of view, which can just screw up your shot. First and foremost, these issues need to be fixed.
What the fuck is with this gun?
In my opinion, I think the Manmelter needs something. Just a tweak, a little buff to incentivize players to use it more often, and to make it more worth their while. The Manmelter is a support damage item, through and through, that rewards players for helping their team against a powerful debuff by giving them crits. So why not make it a bit better at handling other debuffs? I propose this. Why not buff the Manmelter to be a cleaner of some kind? Something that removes all debuffs. This includes Jarate, Mad Milk, Bleeding, and Afterburn, and give it crits for removing each of these. This way, the damage bonus isn't totally reliant on the presence of one class on the enemy team. Not to mention, these debuffs can't be accidentally air blasted away by your flamethrower, making you lose your opportunity to store a crit. Alternatively, you could just make the Manmelter have a stronger incentive for the Pyro's benefit, like a passive minus 30% AIRBLAST cost. This way, weapons like the Backburner and the Degreaser get a slight buff alongside a secondary that ain't all that great damage-wise. This would give the stock Flamethrower 14 AIRBLASTs instead of 10, might be a bit much. Or, as a third option, if we want to get really crazy here, give it a damage bonus against sappers so it can remove them from a distance in some capacity. This way, it's a support item in more than one department. This last one might be too strong, since the Spy is an already pretty weak class in more than one way and has enough shit to deal with. It's just food for thought. What do you guys think? Do you even like the Manmelter? Do you think it's fine as is, or do you think it needs a buff? Let me know in the comments. Speaking of comments...
Are you Air from YouTube with 2 subscribers? Yeah, that's me.
At least 2.
At least.
God, see you later, guys.
No, I got stabbed! Oh man, that's amazing.